Good evening, everyone. It's Thursday, Necro Thursday, and we're coming right back at you with another episode of the Necromaniacs Horror Podcast. How's it going, Jeff?
It's going good, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. I am very far advanced in my packing procedures for my move out of my current location.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it's been taking up a lot of
You got all your
time.
U-Haul boxes?
Yeah, I've been systematically going through everything, packing it up, labeling the boxes. Everything is pretty much in order. Threw away a bunch of stuff. And in a few short weeks, I'll be in my new spot up in Jersey City.
That's awesome, man. So you haven't gotten to the point of packing where, like, it's at the very end and you just start throwing shit in random boxes?
No, that's
just to
never
get
going to
it
be
up?
the way I do it, honestly.
When I moved here to Austin, I said the same thing, and then I'm opening up like dishware and finding my Tombs of the Blind Dead box set. You know what I mean? Like,
right now I'm kind of at the point where I have like just a few changes of clothes that I for like a week. Like a week's. I have a washer dryer here, so I just wash my clothes whenever I want. I have like a couple of forks, a plate, just everything that I need from a day-to-day basis is out, and everything else is boxed up right now, except for like, a couple of things here and there need like some pack. But I still have several weeks before I'm, a few weeks before I'm leaving. So.
right. Yeah. Yeah, man. Good for you. Congratulations. Such a good feeling to start new and be in a new place. It's always sort of rejuvenates me whenever I move.
Yeah, it's a beautiful town that I'm living in, but it's just there's so much baggage living here, man. So many, just the last 3 years have just been like just grim, and I just need to get out of here and change things up in my life a little bit,
Yeah, totally, man. That's what kind of spurred me leaving LA. It was just like, it wasn't like anything in particular, but it's just like I'd been here a long time and don't really need to be here anymore, and I'm getting fucking old, so let's try something new.
Yeah. I've only been here for 3 years, but like the
right.
worst possible things have happened to me since I lived here, so I need to leave.
Yeah, we moved apartments in 2019, and like literally like a month after we moved, the pandemic started.
And that was that's exactly what happened to me, man. I got here and then went into 2 years of isolation,
Yeah, exactly. So like, the place just sort of took on this very depressing vibe, like I've been stuck in here for 2 years. I'm a little sick of it.
So what have you been checking out? Anything cool?
A couple things. Well, first of all, Mike, got to give a shout out to Andy Rourke. Rest in peace, Andy Rourke. It's a big Smiths man. It was one of my favorite bass players. Woke up to the news yesterday, and gotta say, man, kind of hit me.
I understand. I also like the Smiths, and I understand when people that you really look up to creatively pass, and the impact it makes on you for sure.
Yeah, it's weird because you don't know them, but you kind of in a way feel like you do. I've been listening to Smiths for God knows how long now at this point. And, he wasn't really doing a whole lot, but it's still kind of sad to know that, like, if the Smiths ever really did get back together, he won't be there.
Also, he was a pretty young man, too.
59, yeah, it wasn't that old.
Yeah, he was like, I don't know what the circumstances surrounding his passing were, but that's far too young, especially these days. Longevity seems to be extending, and people live, like, vital lifestyles into their 70s,
Yeah.
It seems like. You got Sylvester Stallone like jumping off roofs, and the guy's like 70-something years old,
Yeah. It made me think, too, if he was only 59 when he passed, like, he must have been a fucking kid when he was in the Smiths.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they were all like pretty youngins when they were doing that band.
Yeah. Yeah, which is crazy, because if you think of, like, 19, 20-year-olds making music now, like 9 out of 10 times is garbage.
Well, yeah, there was an anniversary for one of my guys, Ian Curtis. He committed suicide at 23 years old.
Oh my God, I know.
Like all that music that he was involved with was like, he was like probably like 18, 19, 20 years old when he was writing all those songs.
That's crazy to think, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I went
Like,
at like 19 or 20, you write a song like Shadow Play or something like that. It's like crazy to think about that.
it really is, man. It really is. But yeah, rest in peace, man. As far as stuff I've been checking out, last week I mentioned the movie Birdman. Uh, this week is something kind of similar. See, Birdman, I don't know, you've seen it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's supposed to look like one take pretty
Right.
much throughout the
Hmm.
whole movie.
Yeah.
It's not, but it looks that way.
Yeah.
I watched a movie that was 95 minutes and it really was all one take. It's called Boiling Point,
Oh,
and it takes
interesting.
place in a restaurant in London. Okay, not a horror movie, obviously, but I always take sort of an interest in anything that takes place in like the restaurant world because I worked at a bunch of them when I was a younger man.
Right.
And yeah, just seeing like them pulling off like an actual one take movie was really impressive, and you even like stop thinking about it at some point, like, oh, this is just they're still going. If one person makes a mistake, you got to start all the way back at the beginning. So it's really good. I highly recommend it. Again, not a horror movie, but just really impressive technically and obviously like acting wise. So if you appreciate stuff like that, highly recommend it.
Yeah, that sounds
Uh,
like so incredibly difficult to do production wise.
yeah, exactly. And I think I read like they plan on doing like 6 or 7 takes and then just going with the best one. But I think COVID kind of cut their time short. So they only really got to do it a few times. I mean, I can't even imagine the pressure on everyone trying to make that like logistically happen.
Yeah, no, totally. I thought that scene in True Detective was pretty sick, and that was only like a few minutes long. But you just imagine the
Oh,
preparation that goes into that.
yeah, it's crazy. And there's some long takes in the movie we'll talk about later. But other than that, I haven't been checking out too much. I was telling you off air, like I've been kind of go revisiting past musical loves. I been listening to a ton of Pink Floyd in the last 2 weeks.
Right.
I was a huge fan. I went through that phase, like probably my early 20s, where I think for about 2 years, Pink Floyd was the only band I listened to. And I'm meaning that literally. Like I just wouldn't listen to anything else. And I saw some review of The Wall on YouTube, and it just really made me like go back and rediscover that stuff and how much I love it. Sometimes it's fun to go back and revisit stuff you loved when you were younger and see the things that you remember the things that you loved about it.
I also love Pink Floyd. A lot of
Do
their
you?
catalog. Oh yeah, yeah. I don't, they're not a band I talk about a whole lot, but I listen to them quite a bit. And
Mm.
yeah, they especially obviously Dark Side of the Moon, everyone loves that, but particularly The Wall and The Final Cut are really
Yeah,
heavy records for me, definitely.
absolutely. The Final Cut is kind of considered like by many fans to be their worst album, and realistically, it is Roger Waters' first solo record. I mean, he has complete control of the band at that point. I mean, the guys don't even really play on it. The other guys don't even really play on it that much. They just. But yeah, I particularly love that record. I guess I discovered it at a really strange time in my life, when I was a little sad boy.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
It's a very intense, emotional record, and I mean, I remember getting it when I was a kid, and I was just like, wow, this is like so, and I was like a sad boy kid too, you know what I mean? And I was just like, oh man, this record's perfect. No one else likes it. I like it. Sit in my room by myself
Yeah,
listening to it. I know no one else appreciates the record like I do, and all that kind of stuff.
totally. Yeah. I mean, it's all right. I think David Gilmour only sings one song on the record. And it's really different for the time, but you can see like from The Wall to The Final Cut to Roger Waters' first solo record, you can sort of see where he was going musically.
And that British German disdain exists to this day, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you go
Yeah.
to, I mean, I know there's a couple of you guys out there that are Brits, and I know there's a few Germans out there too that are listening. But like that every time I've been, we've had like a driver over on tour that was British or German or whatever, mainly Brits. would talk shit about
Yeah.
Germany like constantly, because of they got bombed. Their family members were destroyed. Their cities were destroyed by the Germans in World War II, and it wasn't
Yeah.
even that long ago.
Yep. Yeah. That's true. I think I remember we did have a British driver at one point. I seem to remember him making a few cracks at the Germans' expense.
Yeah, and it's real. It's a heavy thing to think about. Like here in the States, like we're isolated by we got oceans all around us, and to think that right across that channel, not too far away, you know, bombing distance basically is like people that destroyed your families. It's fucking intense.
Yeah, it's a heavy thing. I remember thinking about that a lot on our first time I ever went to Europe, a European tour. Like, hey, 20 minutes ago, I was in a different country.
Yeah.
You know?
Did I ever tell you the story about I'm not going to mention any names because like this guy's a pretty well known dude in Germany who's like in bands and drives other guys around, but so I don't want to implicate him in anything. But
Right.
the first when Anodyne toured Europe on our only European tour, we had a driver, and the last night of the tour we stayed in his place, and it was he had like an attic apartment, and then there was like an old lady who lived in the first floor. And then there was you had to go through her apartment somehow, and I suspected they were like related. I didn't know for sure. I couldn't confirm or deny that was some relative of his. So, or your hours are all crazy. You wake up early and everything, or late, or you don't even know what time it is most of the time. I never really put my hours straight when I'm over there like that. And I remember walking through the apartment, and I glanced over at the this like counter, like a dresser rather, with photographs, old photos on it, like old. There's a photograph of the woman as a young lady with a guy in an SS uniform.
Oh my God.
I was like, holy shit, man. It was fucking intense, man. And like,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
I think I might have told you this story before.
You did. I remember that.
Yeah.
It is crazy to go over there and see real like Nazi memorabilia. Like some hotel we stayed at had like some Nazi like dishware in behind a display case. Ooh, weird thing to display, I thought, but it was there.
Yeah,
And like we're so removed from it over here. And when you see it right there in front of your face, it reminds you this is very real. This really happened.
I had a great uncle who passed years ago who was in World War II. And he was in a tank in World War II in the desert, right? He has, I mean, I don't know where, it's probably, somewhere, I don't know where it is now. Obviously, he's long gone. But he had all sorts of Nazi stuff that he took off dead German soldiers.
Yeah.
And I just remember seeing that when I was like a young kid and just being like, I thought it was cool, but now I'm thinking about how fucking ghoulish that is,
Yeah. We kind of had this debate on tour. Like, would you have like a piece of Nazi memorabilia if given the opportunity? And most people were like, no, definitely don't want it. And I was like, it's owning a piece of history or something like that. It's heavy. It's got weight to it. But yeah, I don't know if I'd want it in my house either. Probably not.
There was a long time ago down in South Jersey. There's like all these like outdoor, like flea market type things. I forgot what they call them out here. But so I remember we were down there one time. We were playing in Philly, I think, and we stopped and just to whatever. We didn't want to drive all the way home just yet, so we were like stopped at one of these places, and this guy had like all this stuff for sale that was like he had like surplus, like army surplus stuff, and he also had other stuff, quote unquote, right? Like German uniforms from World War II. And I remember looking at one of these like jackets, and in the pocket of the jacket were photographs of like the dude's fucking loved ones and shit like that.
Oh my God.
Like I don't know how the guy didn't go through this shit, but it was like in the pocket of, or maybe he put him in there. Maybe that was part of like the gig,
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
It's so fucking just heavy, man. This guy was obviously he was killed in action. That's how his uniform ended up here. And then there's like
Yeah.
photographs of his family and like wife and, you know, like whatever, you know, just crazy shit, man.
Oh man, yeah, that's fucking heavy, dude. Well, what have you been checking out, Mike?
Oh, oh, actually, this kind of fits with what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It was recommended to me to check out a movie on Netflix called Soft and Quiet. Have you heard
Soft
of
and
it?
quiet. Oh, no, I don't think I have.
Dude, it actually surprisingly fits really well into what we were just talking about. It's I didn't know much about it. Actually, a guy who was going to call in on this show and recommend it messaged me about it, and he's like, "If you want to watch a disturbing movie, check this out." And he was 100% right. And it's horror adjacent. You know, there's no supernatural elements to it, but maybe we should talk about this movie at some point. It's on Netflix, and it's
Okay.
about how am I going to say this? White women
Okay.
who have very, very, very strong racial identity. Okay.
Oh, okay. I think I've heard of this though. Yeah. Okay.
It's a I can't no I don't know if I like it or not, but it's a pretty well made film. The subject matter is like right on the nose these days, especially a lot of even some of the dialogue in there is like you've heard people say these things on the far right, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, like some sort of like Gavin McGinnis, you know, stuff where it's, you know, like, you know, we've been told to not be proud of our heritage in the Western world, you know, all that kind of bullshit. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's a very I can see people having very strong reactions to this movie. I could see it ruffling a lot of people's feathers, and I could see also some nut jobs on the far right empathizing with the characters. You know, and
Right. God. Yeah.
yeah, dude, it's fucked up. Definitely check it out. Maybe I don't know if we want to talk about it at some point, but like it's something to at
Sure.
least to investigate. You know.
Yeah. Well, definitely sounds interesting. You definitely piqued my interest for sure.
And on the other spectrum, I've been watching the you know, The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs, and last
Right.
night, Possession was the second film, and you know how we both feel about that movie.
Oh yeah, one of the best horror movies ever made.
Yeah, so that's fresh in my mind, you know, and just
Nice.
you know, and it's taken like a special place in my heart these days because of the volatile female-male relationship that is depicted in that movie, and it's a film that depicts like feeling bad, like feeling every range of bad emotion that you can feel that a man and a woman can experience with each other. So, yeah, it's definitely taken like a more real connotation in my life these days.
Totally. I remember watching Possession after I got divorced, and it hit a lot different. I'll just say that.
Yeah, totally. You know, and but aside from all that, even if you're not in like the middle of some heavy relationship stuff, and you're out there and you're just happy, just check it out, and it'll bring you down, man.
You know, I'm so glad that people are getting to discover that movie now because of Shudder, and because I mean that movie lingered in obscurity for a long time, and if you saw it or knew about it or owned a copy of it, like, you know, like you knew your shit. But you know, it's great that though that like people are discovering. I've seen it pop up on, you know, other horror podcasts. People are discussing it, and I think it's finally getting its due, and people are going to finally, you know, this great sort of obscure film is kind of being brought to more people's attention.
The only thing that would make that movie better, and it's not that this part of the film is bad at all, not by any means, but would make it even more of an intense film, is if Neubauten did the soundtrack for it.
Dude, not even, it seems like a movie like that is like they would do, you know?
Yeah, totally. Like especially in the beginning where there's those shots of Eastern Europe, not Eastern Europe, about East Germany with the wall and everything, and like,
Yeah.
you know, these like very like grim, bleak, very German. You know, when I think of German, I think of like these like gray skies and like concrete and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Oh, totally.
And I can
Yeah,
hear
I
like
mean,
that Neubauten like mechanical drone, over these shots,
Totally. I mean, you film that movie in Los Angeles, it doesn't work.
No, no,
Like
absolutely not, man. No.
yeah, like the setting is so important to that film.
I actually have the score. I picked it up last year in Denver. I was out there on tour, and we did our thing. We loaded in, and I was walking around the main drag there. I forgot what street that is, and there was like there's all these shops. There's like that True Brewery companies on that same street, and there's like these like a bookstore. And I happened to walk by a shop that I would never in a million years think about going into. It's like some like women's clothing store basically. They had like it's Colorado, so that type of woman, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And out of the corner, as I looked in there, I saw that they had a record section. So I just went in, and I was like looking through the records, and I found Possession, the soundtrack, the film score. So I bought it.
So
it was random, right? Yeah. And
that's amazing.
And I just remember, and even cooler, I was like, got a cup of iced coffee, and I'm like sitting at this cafe. I was like reading, and I had my records out, and like some fairly attractive woman was like, took the seat next to me, and she looked over, and she was like, "Oh my God, the Possession soundtrack! Like, where did you get that?" And I was like, "Well, down at that white woman's store down the street." It's like where all those
That's
white
very
women.
random things.
Yeah. Can you imagine running into just in light of my past experiences, even knowing any woman who would be into that kind of stuff is like a very special thing,
Yeah, totally. And like I said, the movie's like lingered in obscurity forever. So the fact that she would like anyone would even running into anyone who even knew about it is a rarity. Yeah. That's awesome.
Before we get rolling, I just we got to shout out our buddies here in the Horsemen of the Podcasting Apocalypse. After you listen to this show, definitely check out Mondays, Brandon Legion's Horrorwolf 666. Tuesdays, Jackie Smith brings you Into the Necrosphere, the premier extreme metal podcast. Wednesday is Everything Went Black, which has a variety of different things. Thursday is Necro Thursday, of course. Friday, Break the Apocalypse. Mike Scandato's brother John is a co-host on that. And then Sunday, the darkest day of the week, Carl Hikara brings you Soul Knocks. And that's a nice week's worth of excellent content for everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we also have our Necro phone voicemail apparatus, and you can call in. And we've been getting some good call-ins, man. So the number to call in is 908-913-0782. And this week, we've got Braden from Vancouver and Stuart from the Bay Area.
Hey, Necromaniacs. This is Braden from Vancouver calling again. I just had to call and mention this movie that I had just finished, been meaning to see for a long time, and I feel like it might be of some interest to you guys. Onibaba from 1964. It's this old Japanese folk horror film that I would describe as the Japanese soulmate or equivalent almost to The Witch from a few years back. It just captures a lot of the same atmosphere and really takes advantage of the landscape and some of the folklore of its respective culture and place in which it takes place. It's set in feudal Japan, and it's just got this feeling of legitimate myth to it, like something you would read in a storybook. And it's some of the imagery. It's shot in black and white. Some of the imagery is just incredible. Like, it's beautiful, but also horrifying. And just like The Witch, it's got this, not an overt, but an underlying sense of the supernatural that doesn't really come into play until the very end. And even then, you're kind of questioning it, and it's not overt or blatant, which I thought was, which I really enjoy, and I loved it with The Witch as well. But yeah, I feel like it might be of some interest to you guys. You guys might find some enjoyment in it. It's a slow burn, and just really, really well done and worth watching for the imagery alone. And the soundtrack is really kind of sparse, but very effective and kind of bone chilling. So yeah, love the show, guys. Keep it up. Thank you.
Hey guys, this is Stuart out here in the Bay Area. Been listening to the show for a while. Started listening to it when I was commuting to work before the pandemic. Looking for some Wolfman episodes, and I listened to the episode where you covered the Wolfman and also Wolf Cop. Anyways, got a few recommendations. 2 older movies and 1 relatively newer movie. I'm sure you've probably seen some of these, but one is The Sentinel from 1977. That has a lot of people in it. I think Jeff Goldblum is actually in it as a small role, and Ava Gardner's in it. A lot of famous people. It's kind of about a woman who moves into a apartment building filled with dubious characters. It's pretty cool. Then next is another movie from the 70s, Burnt Offerings. I'm sure you've probably seen that one. It's kind of a cool haunted house movie. Oliver Reed is in it. Very, very good. And then the newer one, it's kind of got a Lovecraft angle to it, but it's not really a cosmic horror movie. I know you guys are into Lovecraft. It's called Incident in a Ghostland. It's from 2018. And it's kind of a home invasion movie, but with a weird sort of twist going on, especially at the end. So those are some movies I thought you might like, and I really enjoy the show. Look forward to it every Thursday. So cheers, everyone. Have a good day.
So yeah, thanks guys. It's been a lot of fun. Like we love hearing from you guys on the voicemail line. It's a lot of fun, and it gives like a little bit of a personality. Unfortunately, Mike from Pennsylvania didn't call in this week. I always look forward to hearing from him. But hopefully.
Yeah, me too. He really enjoyed. We got him to watch Enemy.
Yeah, and he also has like a lot of good recommendations, which I've been tallying all these recommendations, and I think this is definite stuff that we could address in the coming episodes. And I keep them coming, guys. And stuff that a lot of it's stuff we've seen, but we just didn't think about covering, And if there's an interest in us talking about it, we'll definitely consider it. And these guys brought up, some great films. Don't you think, Jeff?
Yes. Oh God, yeah, totally. Onibaba. You've seen it before?
Oh yeah, man. That's like fits right into non-Anglo folk horror. You know what I mean? Like when you think of folk horror, you think more of like Britain, But other countries can have that kind of like deep folklore, sort of stuff. You know what I mean? And there's that box set that Severn put out that has a lot of international entries into that genre, which is a genre that I really enjoy.
Yeah, me too. I actually own Onibaba. I believe it's in the Criterion Collection.
Yeah, that's awesome.
If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's really good, really good. I hadn't thought about it in a long time, so thanks for bringing that up. He made a great comparison to like The Witch, which I was like, yeah, that's actually pretty fucking spot on comparison. I didn't even make that connection.
Yeah, Stuart brought up some good ones. Of course, there's Incident in a Ghostland, which is on Tubi right now. And that was directed by Pascal Laugier, who brought us Martyrs. And that's, I've seen that. I've seen both of those films. And of course,
Martyrs, yeah.
Of course, the 2 classics, The Sentinel and Burnt Offerings. Those are classics for sure.
Classics, yeah. Especially Burnt Offerings. Like I have a special place in my heart for that. I saw that when I was just a youngin'. I was a kid. And I thought it was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen at the time.
Yeah, it's definitely worth revisiting all that stuff. And I'm keeping a list of the stuff that we haven't covered yet that you guys are recommending to us, and we'll start going through that stuff for sure.
Yeah, I'd be down to cover any of those movies for sure.
Yeah. So thanks, guys. Keep them coming. It's a lot of fun. I really like hearing from everybody, and one of you guys, Cam, I'm going to see you next week, and at the Hell in the Harbor festival, which is actually, when this airs, it's in 2 days. so yeah, I'll see you in Baltimore. All right, man.
Almost sounds like a threat.
I'll see you in Baltimore, kid. No threats. It's all good here.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, Tubi, man. Tubi's like buck wild when it comes to horror,
Yeah, I keep hearing that.
I mean, you have to watch it with ads, but
Yeah.
it's free, and it blows my mind that anyone can sign up for it and watch a movie like Found, which is like, very heavy and very, that's a movie that, like, if I had like a 9-year-old kid, I don't know if I'd really want him to watch a movie like that, really,
That's true. But I was allowed to watch whatever I wanted, and it shaped me into the person I am today. So, who knows?
Lucky us.
Yeah.
All right, man. So
we're
that's
going all the way back to 99 today, right?
Yeah, we got Summer of Sam, released May 20th, 1999 at Cannes Film Festival. July 2nd, 1999 in the U.S. And I think I saw it that summer, actually, in the movie theater in 99. Yeah, did you see it in the theater?
No, I think this is one of the first DVDs I watched, though.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah. My friend had it.
It's 142 minutes long, so a bit on the long side.
Yeah.
Directed by Spike Lee and written by Victor Colicchio, the great Michael Imperioli, and Spike Lee.
Great. Yes.
And I'm a huge Michael Imperioli fan. I follow him on Instagram.
Me too.
I think his
Me
Instagram
too.
is cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
He had a book signing out here in New Jersey, and I was going to go, but there was like a snowstorm or something that day, and I didn't make it out there.
Yeah. He's so not the character he's known for.
No, not at all. Not in any of the films. Like, he pops up in a ton of movies, and and everyone knows him as Christopher Moltisanti from The Sopranos, and he couldn't be further from him. Actually, Imperioli went to high school in the next town over from where I grew up in outside of New York City.
That's right. I remember you saying that. You guys are roughly
the same age. He's a year older than me, I think. So, and I actually had a girlfriend in the high school that he went to. And we maybe could have been in the same spots at the same time or whatever.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
It's entirely possible. Yeah. It's a small fucking world.
It is. A lot of those like Italian American actors though, are like that people know from, are like kind of all have areas close to where I grew up and that kind of thing. So, it is what it is.
Yeah,
but
sure.
This is a great cast. We've got John Leguizamo as Vinny, Adrian Brody as Richie, the sublime Mira Sorvino as Diana.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had forgotten that she was in this before I watched it again.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go through everybody, but just the main people here. Jennifer, there's a huge cast. Jennifer Esposito as Ruby, Ben Gazzara as Luigi. John Savage has a small part in this film, and anyone who's a fan of The Deer Hunter knows John Savage. He plays a guy named Simon. Jimmy Breslin, as himself. Now, the David Berkowitz Son of Sam character was played by Michael Badalucco. Spike Lee as John Jeffries, a newscaster. Michael Imperioli as Midnight. Great character.
Yeah.
The voice of John Turturro is Harvey the dog.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, another great character actor, Anthony LaPaglia, as Detective Lou Petrocelli. Actually, there's one C, so it's Petrocelli. Okay. Roger Yonville Smith as Detective Kurt Atwater. And that's pretty much the main characters, I would say. I mean, there's a bunch of other like cuisine like dudes in there that are like, you know what I'm saying? There's like familiar faces, if you watch gangster movies or movies about New York City and whatever. So there's like a bunch of these like cuisine Italian guys in there.
Oh, yeah, totally. And I would say outside of the four main characters, all the other parts are smaller, but they're all everyone's got a great part. Everyone's got a great character to play in this.
The thing I like about this movie is like it's I'm gonna expand on what you just said. We have the four main characters, but like the backdrop of everything, all the different people weave this like pastiche of like the story, you know. And it reminds me of New York itself, actually. Like when you walk down the street in New York City, you got every type of person you can imagine in your viewport, you know what I mean? And like it just that whole atmosphere defines that city, you know. And that's how this movie, I don't think somebody who hasn't been a New Yorker could have written a film like this. So, you know, hats off to the crew who wrote the movie and Spike Lee for directing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Spike Lee knows New York maybe better than any filmmaker. Every movie he's made about New York, it's just so vibrant and authentic, and you have a lot of different sort of cultures coming together in this movie, and it never really feels like it hits a false note for me.
And also, each culture is specific to New York City. It's like black culture in New York is way different than in the South. You know what I mean? And like the Latino culture in New York City is way different than L.A. And like even Italian Americans in New York City are different than Italian Americans in other parts like Chicago or something like that. You know, so it's very specific.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And this is the '70s, and you know the disco movement is in full swing. Punk is starting to become a big presence in New York City. It's an interesting time, and you know, like it's interesting too that the movie's called Summer of Sam, but it's really not about the Son of Sam killer at all. It's really sort of about one neighborhood and the effect that this serial killer has on the neighborhood, which was a really interesting take on the serial killer film.
Yeah, because you don't get into like you think of like some of the more recent entries into serial killer films, you know, like Dahmer, where it's all about you're inside of his head. You know, Berkowitz is almost like an element. You know, it's almost like part of the background. You know, and you just see the anxiety and fear that his presence sort of instilled on the entire city, and how everyone's paranoid, and the paranoia. Is actually the paranoia of Berkowitz is actually more of the villain of this story than the actual murders in some ways.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to put it. Totally. And I like that it just zooms in on this one group of people in the Bronx rather than like a citywide thing. I mean, you do get some of that, like Spike Lee plays a reporter, and you know he's sort of you see a little bit of the perspective from the black neighborhoods, but it mostly focuses on this Italian American neighborhood.
And just for anyone out there who has never been to New York City, the Bronx is it's like the northernmost borough in New York that is adjacent to Westchester County, which is the suburbs. And there's a couple of different bridges. There's the Whitestone Bridge, the Throgs Neck Bridge that connect it to New York City proper. And Spike Lee has a little injection of Bedford-Stuyvesant, which is in Brooklyn, which is way south. So the murders are all happening in the northern part of the city, and some of the perspectives of Bed-Stuy, Do or Die, are very much removed. And Berkowitz didn't go into Brooklyn, is what I'm trying to say in a roundabout way.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. You know, you mentioned the show Dahmer. What's really interesting about this movie is, you know, like the conversation that was happening around the TV show Dahmer is something that was happening back in 1999 around this film. Like, is this exploitation of is this disrespectful to his victims? You know, here we are, like 20-something years later, having the same conversation about.
What are your views on that though? That's I'm interested to hear what you think about that with respect to this film in comparison to Dahmer.
I think, well, you know, obviously some films can be exploitive and gross, and you know, Dahmer maybe for some people push a little bit too much up against the line on that. Not for me, but I, you know, don't begrudge anyone who disagrees. I think this movie I don't find it exploitive at all. Like, I think this is a really unique, interesting take on serial killers. Um, I mean, I don't know that there's really anything anything else like this out there that ever took this sort of perspective. So no, I don't think this is distasteful or disrespectful at all. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't think I mean, Berkowitz is barely in it, really.
Yeah,
And you're not in
yeah,
his head. You don't even. He's a two-dimensional character in this film. It's like you take the
yeah,
elements of the things that we know about him, and then they put it out there. Like it's not like the Ultimate Evil, the Maury Terry book, where you're getting into like all the conspiracies and his ties to like the Process Church and Manson, and none of that stuff happens in this. It's all just he's a guy. His dog, he believes his dog speaks to him. And he
yeah,
goes
yeah.
out and kills women. He shoots men too, but like he goes out and murders people in the Bronx. That's all you really know about him.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I like the way you put it, where you said this movie is more about the anxiety he created, and that anxiety is really like manifested mostly in the character of Vinny, where like Vinny's a really interesting character, and I gotta say, for John Leguizamo, like kills it in this role. I don't know if has he ever been like a lead, like the lead actor in a film? I can't think of one.
That's a good question, but I'm surprised this didn't launch his career in a different, like to more leading roles. But he was fucking great, I thought too.
Yeah, he's really, really good in this. And he kind of plays this, I mean, complicated guy. He's the lead guy, so you sort of identify with him. But Vinny's kind of a piece of shit.
Well,
And
what's interesting too is a lot of this film has to do with ignorance, I think. You know what I mean?
yes,
And
yeah,
that's kind of like the carry away with this. It's like, yeah, it's a fun movie. There's like cool things in it. There's beautiful women in it and all this kind of stuff. Myra Sorvino's in it. You know how I feel about her. You know what I mean? But the main thing is like Leguizamo's character of Vinny is kind of like the guy who can go either way. He's got like he's friends with Richie, who's definitely in his own world. He's doing his own thing, breaking away from the Italian American experience of the Bronx. He's married, yet he cannot stop cheating on his wife because he's hung up in this like Catholic guilt thing of being satisfied with the one that he loves, physically. So he has all these like desires that he has to seek elsewhere. So
yeah,
if he can reconcile all these things, he'll be okay. But because he has like a very strong attachment to the old ways of thinking, these like very conservative Italian American Catholic ideologies, he can't break away from that, and he's torn apart by that, really.
yeah. Like a really, really interesting character. Like he makes this all about himself, and I mean, I'm sure we all know someone like that. Like he thinks God doesn't want him to like have cheeky sex with his wife or be into the things that he's into, and he sort of almost uses like the David Berkowitz as like an excuse almost, you know what I mean, for his behavior.
Yeah, I could see that, definitely. And then the other
Yeah,
characters, the other guys in the neighborhood are happy to be ignorant and just live in the old school way of thinking, that they don't know any other way. And what's also interesting is they have a transgender character in this movie too.
oh yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, I kind of wrote that down like as maybe one like thing that I was like, because like, okay, they don't. Richie's from the neighborhood. That's Adrian Brody's character.
Yeah.
And Richie comes back. I guess he was in the city for a while, and he looks, like a 1970s punk. And he's speaking in this British accent in one of the most cringiest scenes I've ever seen in a fucking movie, man.
It ruled because it's like, I mean, I never knew anyone who did anything like that, but I imagine there are people who were like, like British punk was like where it was at for like, I'm not a big fan of British punk myself, but except for maybe Discharge or something, but they were
Okay.
much later. I'm not a Pistols fan. The Clash were like a rock and roll group, in my opinion.
Right.
Punk to me was like the New York Dolls and like Ramones, Stooges, stuff like that. That was like the guys who brought it to the streets.
Yeah, totally.
England, the idea that the English had about punk rock music came from the United States. Like the Pistols wouldn't exist without the Ramones. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So that's
Yeah.
my viewpoint. You know, everyone wants to attack me on that. That's cool. You know, whatever. I know like some of
But
the Brits
yeah,
out there probably have a different point of view.
yeah, they probably do.
Yeah.
But it's just funny. I think we can relate to it in the sense where like everyone knows someone, or maybe you were that person. You discovered something, and then like you completely change.
Yeah. Oh,
You
totally.
know, overnight. And that's what the vibe I got from Richie. Like that fake British accent, dude. That scene goes on forever, and it makes me cringe
Yeah, it does,
so
man.
hard.
Adrian Brody is a good actor, man. He's been in some questionable stuff, but I think that when he has the right director and the right role, he actually does a really great job.
Agreed. He's great in this, and I think this was his breakout role. One of them.
I think so because I remember seeing this in the theater, and I was like, man, the guy who played Richie was awesome. I never really seen him before, you know?
Yeah. But my point being, like, okay, so the neighborhood doesn't accept Richie with his dog collars and spiky hair and fake British accent, but like they have this this. I did you say transgender? I just thought he was sort of a gay man.
Well, I'm going to be careful how I put that. It's
Yeah.
like he was clearly gay, and he confirms that later, you know. And but he also is dresses like a woman, you know. I mean, I don't think he had
Right.
any kind of like hormone therapy or operations done or anything like that. But he was like a cross dresser, I guess. And I know that's probably not
Sure.
a politically correct term, but it is what that's.
Yeah.
I'm just hey, we're talking about a film that was supposed to take place in the '70s, so I'm going to use the terms they would use back then. You know,
That was made in the '90s too.
that was made in the
So,
'90s. Yeah.
Yeah. That was like the only thing I thought. Like, it seemed weird that they would just shun Richie, but like these kind of ignorant fucking lunkheads are very accepting of that guy. You know what I mean? Yeah, it was like the only thing I was like, I don't know about that, but you know.
Well, one of the things I have to say about that Cougine, like small time. Now, this is the other thing too about a neighborhood like that in New York City. Like people would think that New York is like this highly cultured place. You know, it's like the center of business and all this stuff, and center of art, and all those things are true. However, when you go to the outer boroughs, these small neighborhoods you're almost like in the Ozarks. You know what I mean? It's like some of these guys, like they live in these places, have never left their neighborhood. You know, they stay there.
Yeah.
They work as like, you know, they get a job, they're a mechanic or whatever. They like one guy works construction, he's a plumber, but their whole lives are really focused in this very insular world. So it is very much like a small town, like wherever it was Pelham Park, or wherever it was supposed to take place. So these guys all grew up with each other. There's probably multi-generations of their families that live in this town, dating all the way back to the turn of the century when the Italians came over to New York. And so they are accustomed to this guy. And as he changed, it was a gradual, slow change. And they don't agree with him. And they probably have harassed this guy. But he's also he's first part of the neighborhood. And second, he's part of this overarching gay culture. So that's how I read that situation. Richie disappears and he comes back a completely different guy. And that's why I think there's such a strong reaction to him.
That's a great point. Yeah. Okay. All right. Strike what I said from the record.
No, I mean, I know a lot
that's a
about
really good
Italian American small-mindedness, believe me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you didn't grow up in the city, but you know, this is closer like to where you grew up than where I did.
That area that they're in is probably about 30 miles from where I grew up.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah,
I mean, so you probably knew guys like this.
I knew guys exactly like that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great way to put it. Like how this big city, like, you know, you go to these like boroughs, they're almost like small towns. Like this sort of ignorance and fear of anything they don't know. They have such a small world view that, of course, everything they make about themselves, like they're reading about the Son of Sam killer in the paper, and they just automatically assume he's from their neighborhood. He's someone they probably know.
Yeah, exactly. So they start, you know, thinking about who, you know, and this is the subtext of the whole film really is like the outsider, you know, and
Yeah.
you know, the other, and that's obviously something that Spike Lee is something that's a characteristic in a lot of his films, and in this case, since the African American experience is not the focus of this, it's more of like shown through like an Italian American point of view, or even among like people, they can single out someone and make them the other.
Yeah, absolutely. This seems like it was tailor-made for Spike Lee. I think it suits his sensibilities perfectly. And I don't know if you remember, Mike, but there was a controversy about Spike Lee directing this film back in 1999.
I don't remember that.
This was his first film. This is his first film with a predominantly white cast. And
what was the controversy?
Well, Spike Lee had made some comments in the past. This director, Norman Jewison, was supposed to direct Malcolm X, and he was just like, respectfully, like, a black man should make that film, and like made some comments about white filmmakers, making films with a predominantly black cast. Maybe they don't have the understanding to really make the movie what it should be. And so I think it was sort of Spike Lee's past comments coming to bite him in the ass. Like, well, what is Spike Lee doing making a film with an all, majority white cast? There's something like that. It's been a while. I don't remember.
Yeah. I mean, like,
but I remember there being talk about that, like saying like Spike Lee's a hypocrite or something.
Now that you mention it, I vaguely remember that. But I mean, he started making films at a very young age, and
yeah,
you're obviously very passionate about these beliefs, and I'm not going to agree or disagree because I think there are kernels of truth to a lot of the things he's saying. Like, for example, didn't like John Wayne play like a Native American in a movie like back in like?
Yeah, he played Genghis Khan.
He plays like I mean, that's ludicrous, right?
Yeah,
so
completely.
What he says, I think, is a little bit connected to that in some ways, where it's like if you're going to make a film about a black cultural icon, then it would make sense to me that a black director or screenwriter would be involved in the production of that because it's part of like their cultural experience.
I totally agree.
I mean, a white guy could go ahead and make it, but it probably wouldn't have the same insights that like a black director would have.
Right, but yeah, totally. But I think Spike Lee is so tuned in to New York City, and that I think he, like I said, he is very qualified to make this movie. I think he understands in New York. I think he understands that sort of mentality of these cuisines, as you say. You know what I mean? Like, I think this is right up Spike Lee's alley.
And also the point, like I was saying, is like the other isn't always necessarily a racially different person than that's in this case the other is Richie, a guy from the neighborhood, Italian American, white guy, whatever you consider. Some people don't consider Italians white, but whatever.
That's true. Yeah.
Maybe some of you listeners out there in the South might speak to that.
Yeah, and maybe Spike Lee doesn't really get like the punk scene entirely.
No,
but
for sure he doesn't get that. No, definitely.
Yeah, well, but I mean, like, it didn't like make me cringe the depiction of punk rock in the '70s in this. Like, I do believe that was filmed in CBGBs, the CV scenes.
Yeah, it looks like CVs, definitely.
Yeah, it did look like it to me. The only the song that they sing, like Richie's band, oh my god. Like it was pretty. That was pretty bad.
Well, also, I wasn't going to shows in the '70s, obviously, but
right.
I'll speak more like the hardcore scene, and I have to believe the punk scene was the same way. Just from guys like Eugene Robinson would tell me stories about this, where it's like it wasn't just like white people that went to shows at CB's in the Lower East Side back then. It was like
no,
very, very, very multicultural, and that's always been the kind of like thing in New York is that every type of person was involved in a scene like that, and everyone was able to like figure out a way to coexist.
Yeah, totally.
Somewhat. I mean, until crews started showing up and beating everyone up at shows, but yeah.
Yeah, that was sort of like when I started getting into it, like the early '90s is when like hardcore took on that sort of vibe. Randy and I talk about it all the time. Like he's like, that's when hardcore got dumb.
Yeah, no, totally.
But I really liked how he captured like you said, like Richie is the other, and sort of this like weird, like people didn't understand punk rock, and like it was like evil and satanic. And I love the scene where Vinny and Mia Sorvino are going to CBGB's all dressed up, you know, thinking they're going to go see their friend's band play. Like,
they got like this disco outfit and stuff.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, I don't want to go in. I don't want to go in here, Vinny. You know,
I just see like
I don't like this.
I skeeved this place.
Yeah, that's right.
Which I understand.
Yeah.
Anyone, I mean, CB's is long gone, but it was a horrible fucking place, man. It really was, you know.
Oh my God. I mean, yeah, I know you've played there a bunch.
With you. I played there with you. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was sort of a badge of honor, like fucking playing CBGB's, this legendary place. But then you realize, dude, this place is a fucking dump. You know?
Oh, dude, totally. And back, like, I mean, I never was there in the 70s, obviously, you know. But even through the 90s when you went there, that neighborhood was a shot. Like, just really, really sketchy. You know what I mean? And, you know, all the way up until I would say maybe right around the time that they closed that place down, it was kind of shabby, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, of course, the bathroom at CB's is legendary. Everyone's, you know, heard about that. And, but I think he captured it really well, the sort of misunderstanding of something. And I found it also fascinating that, like, again, this movie is 1999 and it's dealing with themes that are very relevant today.
Yeah, and like those themes have always been around though. That's the thing, you know. It's like all this like othering is more mainstream now, but it's always kind of been there though. You know what I'm trying to say? And it's
totally.
People are acting like this division is like a new thing. There's always been a division. I mean, you know, like traveling through like some of the less enlightened parts of this country, the things that you run up against, you know, all the way back to the 90s. You know, I was called some kind of slur when we were getting gas in Montana one time, you know, and I don't even think I looked that weird. You know, I just had like you know, I was just not from the area, you know, so there's like, that's always been going on. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's always been a thing. Even like, it's funny, like they kind of touch on conspiracy theories a little bit in this movie where one guy thinks that Reggie Jackson is the son of Sam. Like, I feel like I could like turn on, you know, go on YouTube and see some similar like conspiracy theorists ranting about something crazy like that. Like, and just like misinformation. And if you have a small world view, how you are going to make everything relate to you. Like I said, they think that the guys from the neighborhood, and they start making a list of people who they think the son of Sam is.
Right. There's like a Vietnam vet who, you know, he lives alone. He drives a cab. So obviously he's a guy. So they roll up on this dude and like beat him up and everything. And, but I got to be honest. I always feel like they were in their primate minds. They were trying to figure out a way. They always had it out for Richie as soon as he came home back from the city, you know, and like, you know, they needed to figure out a way where they could alienate him and do stuff to him. Right. So there was a police sketch that was going around and they were like, oh, check it out. It looks like Richie.
Yeah, exactly. They draw little like spikes on the drawing. So it looks like Richie's hair. Yeah.
It looks like Richie's hair.
Yeah, and there's an incident at a diner, which is one of my favorite scenes in the movie, where you know, it's Richie and Vinny, and all the other. There's a couple of guys in there who don't like Richie's appearance, and it causes a whole scene. And they won't serve. I don't know why I like this line so much. And John Lane's like, "He's just got guys in the neighborhood to get a couple of roast beef sandwiches. Come on."
This part hit me hard because. Well, first of all, the scene is brilliant. These guys have like bowling shirts and stuff like that, and and like they're just like totally characters, you know. And then Richie and Vinny are sitting at a table, and they're just like, yeah, let's get, you know, like a, you know, turkey Swiss. You know, we're at it. The thing is, see, we're out of turkey, you know.
Yeah.
We're out of that too, you know. It's all right. Do me a favor, get me, you know, ham and cheese or whatever. We're out of bread. You know, it's like, And they like
Yeah.
that's when it all comes to fruition, that it's like these other guys, the guy who grew up in the neighborhood, because he's different, they can't stand the sight of him anymore.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And Richie just says basically "fuck you," breaks a bottle over his head, like, "Oh, you're scared of me? Like now you
Yep.
should really be fucking scared of me," you
Yep.
know?
Yep.
And it's sort of like, the it obviously works to his disadvantage, because when the guys from the neighborhood hear about this, like, "Oh, Richie, he's licking his own blood off his
Yeah,
head."
exactly. Yep.
Oh, he's the son of Sam, clearly, and there's a great scene after that between Vinny and Richie, where Richie talks about everyone's got two personalities, the one you're born with and the one the world gives you. And that further sort of cements, like, in Vinny's mind, that this guy, he might be the son of Sam.
Yeah, because it's funny. They just draw these conclusions. They make these connections, and it's interesting, man. And also, like, I related to Richie, man. Like when I was a kid, like stuff like that kind of happened to me a little bit. Like when I was in high school.
Oh, sure.
I'm sure you experienced the same thing. Once, like, you're not wearing like Capizios and like like whatever fucking stupid clothes you kids wore back in the '80s. It was like,
oh, totally.
Oh, you fucking worship Satan. I'm like, maybe I do, maybe I don't. Like that was my answer sometimes to these people. And
yeah, exactly. And then you never think that could be your undoing. Like
exactly. Yeah.
I remember in high school, me and all my friends were like brought into the principal's office to talk to a detective, because there was a string of cats being killed.
That was big back then. I remember.
Yeah, and they literally brought in like all of my friends, and like, because we were the punks, we all wore black, and they just like, and I just remember being interviewed by cops, and they're like, "Well, we know you have some involvement in this," and I was like, "I'm a vegetarian. Why would I kill a cat?" And it was just clearly obvious, like, round up the weird kids,
It's been the age-old.
That was a very real thing.
Yeah, dude, it's been the age-old experience, man. It's like. That's always been the way it was, and I was like, as a kid, I was into sports, and I played football and I wrestled and all this stuff, but that did not stop people from picking on me and singling me out once I started to become my own individual person, and that's why I discovered martial arts, I guess. So
yeah, there you go. Now you can go back and fuck them up. But yeah, I forgot where the fuck I was going with that.
No, but so they decide that Richie is the son of Sam, and then but so they're gonna use Vinny as like a decoy to lure him so they can deal with him.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're gonna because there's this another very common thing that rings true today: mob justice, mob mentality.
Yep.
And it's obviously taken on a different form now. Well, maybe not necessarily. It wasn't that long ago white supremacists were marching around with tiki torches.
Not that it's still happening. It's like I mean, we're exactly, like inches away from that again right now in this country.
Yeah. But the whole mob mentality, this sort of pile-on, this idea that we know. Like the cops can't catch him. We got to catch him. We have to deal with this. I feel like it's a common thing today, and a lot of it, and it just shows like, yeah, they're complete ignorance. They don't really know what they're doing. They don't really know what they're talking about.
They just decided that Richie's a murderer.
Yeah, exactly. Just for being different. He's he comes from a world they don't understand, and Richie has somewhat of a double life too. And you know what I mean? Like, so the more pieces of this information that get to him, like they're like, well, obviously, yeah, it's got to be him. This guy's leading a double life. He's into this, like, I couldn't quite get like what his like job was.
Oh yeah, okay.
Like he's like a stripper.
Yeah, so I've heard about stuff like this. You know what I mean? Like, reading books about like Times Square and all that kind of stuff. And also dudes that were on the streets, kind of like from that scene. Where like would do like turn tricks and be like these male dancers and stuff like that. And actually on the Rialto report, a podcast that Mike and I listen to. Mike turned me on to it. It's about they talk a little bit about more with the women that were in the punk scene that ended up doing porn and doing all this other stuff. So, you know, and there's also other you know, guys would do the same stuff. So that's kind of what Richie was doing. He was with Ruby from the neighborhood, and she became a punk. They moved back to the Lower East. They moved to the Lower East Side, and they had to make ends meet. And they fell into that whole meat grinder of porn and prostitution and all that sort of stuff, which is like kind of a you know, kind of a realistic story, really. You know, so now that's why you know, that's where we see Michael Imperioli. That's that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a nice cock on him. Yeah, you're lucky lady. I play such a fucking sleazy piece of shit with his cowboy hat.
Dude, fucking cowboy hat, that sketchy like mustache and everything.
Yeah.
It must be so much fun to come up with these characters. You know what I mean?
Oh God, yeah, exactly. And you know, Michael Imperioli, right? Is probably like, yeah, I'm going to play this guy. You know,
it's like a leather cowboy hat.
Yeah, because it's like he wrote the movie. He could have probably gotten any part he wanted. He chose that one.
Good for him, man. I love that. He was perfect too. You know.
Oh, he was great. Yeah, and what's interesting too is like they're not doing this for money for drugs. They're just doing it to survive. You know, it's just like a job for them, which is kind of cool. You don't see that in movies a lot. Usually you see people, you know, like they're strung out, so they need money, and you know what I mean. Like I thought it was kind of cool, especially since it was made in 1999. It's just like, oh, it's just something they do.
Actually, you don't even really see either of them getting into drugs, aside from maybe some weed.
No.
You know, they're not shooting heroin or, you know, doing anything like that. They're just smoking weed here and there.
Yeah, exactly. If any, like Vinny is the strung out guy. He's the fucked up one. Which is interesting too. Like Vinny thinks he's like, you know, he wants to be this straight and narrow moral man of God, but it's against his nature. Like he's a fucking, you know, he's really like shows very like he's just, you know, he's some sort of like, you know, sex addict, something like that.
Yeah. Well, Richie
can't control himself.
Exactly. Richie. They frame him up as a deviant, right?
Yeah.
But Richie is the one who's the deviant. He's got his beautiful wife, Vinny. Sorry, I got the names backwards. Yeah, what you said. He's got this beautiful Mira Sorvino at home, right? And he cannot stop cheating on her. And because he's afraid of confronting his desires with her, and he's doing drugs and like creating all this tension and anxiety and just ruin in his life, you know, and then he's all strung out basically, and his the guys in the neighborhood kind of you know, exploit him to put them in a position to get at Adrian Brody's character.
Yeah, the Studio 54 scene, which leads to like the orgy scene, and Vinny's handling of that is just like it's not humorous, but sort of maybe darkly funny. I don't know, you know, like he finally, you know, he's got his wife there and they're having this like orgy, and then just the guilt that comes after that.
Oh man, yeah, totally.
In the graveyard, they're driving through the graveyard, and he's just looking at his wife in disgust, and he's like, "You fucking whore, you piece of shit." And then she finally lets it all out. It's like, "You're the piece of shit."
Yeah, and it's like such like an irony, you know, that he, you know, or maybe not an irony, because like he just that Italian American Catholic thing, you know, you're not supposed to do things like that with your wife, you know. There's like, it's sad,
yeah,
you know, it really is. It's sad, you know. You see this stuff even in like the Sopranos movies, like even like anything with the mafia, like the mother. You know, and then everyone's got like a gumad on the side, you know what I mean? And it's
exactly.
And they do all their dirty stuff with her, you know, and it's like, it's rather than try to have a healthy relationship with the person that you want to be with, you know?
Yeah, it's very like, I'm sure there's a lot of people who can relate to that. But what I found funny is Vinny tries to like rationalize it, like, Richie's got me, you know, he's in a cult, he's got me thinking all crazy, you know, it's like, it's not my fault, like Richie's in a cult, like, it's just, you know, hilarious. That's just funny. That's sort of like, nothing's my fault, you know. This is all Richie's fault.
Lack of responsibility. Yep.
Yeah, Exactly. Like Vinny is the architect of his own undoing, and he doesn't seem to want to confront that at all. Like, he's looking for excuses for his behavior.
Now, the interesting thing about that, it's like on first analysis, you might want to say, oh, well, the guy's too weak to really be his own person. But you got to understand, like, just the relentless, like, culture of that, which the guy is grew up in that neighborhood, is probably his family, probably how multiple generations are there. Everyone he knows is there. It's not the easiest thing in the world to break out from that world, to
Right.
give up, like ideologically change, and especially with the Christian element, the whole Catholic thing, like people that subscribe to that believe that in their soul that this is the true way of living. So it's
Right.
It's a little bit of weakness, but it's also kind of a Herculean effort to get out from underneath that method of thinking,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I get that.
I mean, like, I'm not gonna, like, give him any excuses for that. I mean, but it's like that's an understanding, I guess, for what his behavior is.
Sure. Yeah. No. Totally. I gotta say though, like, what did you think about the ending of this? Because I mean, Spike Lee usually like really drives his point home and always kind of fully like realizes his stories. The only like sort of weak spot I see in this is this movie just sort of ends.
Yeah, I agree with that. Inevitably they catch up to Richie.
Yeah.
And he gets beat up very badly, actually, and that's kind of the climax of the story, really. And then there's nothing really seems resolved, or you know what I mean. You don't know what's going on in the future. There's no conclusion to anything, I guess.
Right. There's no one really suffers like the consequences of their actions because they don't kill Richie. They just beat him up. You know what I mean. Whereas like. And Do the Right Thing, Spike Lee's masterpiece, all ends like all this tension ends with a murder and a riot. And this just sort of ends with, Richie gets beat up, the end.
Oh, and concurrently while they're doing that, Berkowitz gets arrested by the cops as the son of Sam.
Right. Yeah, exactly. He's from, where was he from too? He was like, he wasn't nearby, right? He was like, they were so insistent he was from their neighborhood and it wasn't even anywhere near
I want to say that Berkowitz, the neighborhood he was from, I think was in Queens, actually.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, maybe.
So yeah, the movie kind of like, it feels like, it's leading to this sort of tragedy. Like the guy's already been caught, and here is like the Gugines think they caught him, and like, they're gonna bring him to, the sort of mafia guy in the neighborhood for justice. And yeah, he just sort of gets beat up at the end.
I want to say that they don't even really acknowledge they beat him up, but they had no intention of really putting him in with the cops or they turning him in or anything like that either.
Right. Which leads me to believe that they were bringing him to the local mobster Luigi, and I thought what I got from that was like, yeah, they were gonna whack him or whatever.
Yeah, whack him. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. I'm trying to.
That's what I think. I don't. Yeah. But that's really kind of the only minor complaint. There's a few other things. Richie and Vinny are obviously very close, and you never really get a really good sense of why they're close, and like Vinny just is the only guy that doesn't shun him. I guess maybe they probably had a strong bond before he left, but they don't really. They don't really explicitly say that.
Interesting thing. Berkowitz is from Brooklyn, actually.
Okay.
And his name was Richard David Falco. So he's Italian.
Yeah, okay.
Interesting, right?
All right.
Yeah.
History lesson right here on Necromaniacs, people.
The 44 caliber killer. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But overall, I mean, what did you think of this? It's been 24 years since this came out. Did you see watching it through your guys today? What did you think of it?
I still enjoyed it.
What do you get this?
I still loved it. I thought it was great. I don't give it like a perfect score, but I give it a 4 out of 5.
I agree. 4 out of 5 for me too. Interesting enough, like this is not regarded as one of Spike Lee's better films.
You know, in a way, I can understand that because, there isn't like some like overt political, meaning to anything. And I mean, my favorite Spike Lee is Clockers, actually.
That's a great one.
Yeah, I think that movie is
mine
awesome.
Is the 25th Hour.
25th Hour is another good one. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
There
was Spike Lee has a handful of just great movies. Like probably like 8 or 9 that are just great. You know what? I think this one is maybe towards the bottom of that list, but I think this is one of his better movies. I think maybe at the time people expected something different from Spike Lee, and that's maybe not why this is so highly regarded. But seeing it now, it's just when he's got this huge body of work now. I really like this. This is a really interesting take on the genre. I think Spike Lee understands New York better than most filmmakers, and this is a great movie. It was really fun to revisit.
Yeah, it's definitely in the middle or lower middle of his work. Like I said, Clockers is like probably one of my favorites. That one's like it's Michael Imperioli is in that too.
Yes, he is. Small role.
Crooked Jojo.
Clockers, Do the Right Thing, Mo Better Blues, 25th Hour. Those are like that's top tier Spike Lee for me. And this isn't quite there, but it's it's in the same realm as He Got Game, or I'm drawing a blank here. It's certainly not Old Boy.
No. It's funny. It's interesting that in Clockers, it's based on the Richard Price novel. I don't know if you know.
Yes.
Richard Price is a very prolific crime writer. He's also written a bunch of good screenplays out there. His character, the way that he wrote it, Price wrote it, is from the cop's point of view in the book. And the way Spike Lee flipped it, and it's like from the drug dealer's perspective.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the movie was quite different from the book, right?
Yeah, I mean, it told it from the story of it's just different perspectives on the same kind of situation. Yeah.
I think that was the first film Spike Lee was a director for hire on. Like he didn't write. This wasn't a project he originated.
Yeah, I think
this came to him.
I think that's right, actually, because there was. I remember reading about how there was some pushback on him changing that up a little bit in the script.
Yeah. But hey, I found myself digging out my Spike Lee Blu-rays and DVDs since watching this because it's been a while since I just watched a bunch of his films, and it's really sparked that. Like I'm ready to watch Inside Man, 25th Hour, Do the Right Thing, all those movies, Malcolm X. Like Spike Lee is just such an interesting filmmaker. Even his failures are kind of fascinating to watch.
Yeah, I agree.
Like
all my
Old Boy.
DVDs. Yeah, wow. Nah, that's pushing it. I think a little bit because the original is so such an iconic film.
It's untouchable. And he was a very odd choice for it. He didn't really bring a lot of passion to that. It felt like it just watching it is like this doesn't feel like Spike Lee like on all cylinders. You know what I mean? But this movie we just watched does.
Yeah, absolutely. All my Blu-rays and DVDs are in boxes right now, packed. So it's hard to.
Yeah.
I only have like a handful of things available to me right now.
Right. Yeah. Mine are unpacked, but they're just kind of on the floor. I still haven't bought shelves for them.
Yeah, dude. Everything's off the walls right now. I got blank walls. The shelves are empty. There's a bunch of boxes. It's like this very strange environment to live in for the next few weeks.
Well, hopefully your neighbor's dog doesn't start talking to you.
No, my cat started talking to me, but that's always been
yeah, there you go. Oh, I think that about covers it, man. This was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought this one up, man. And for everyone else out there who called in, thanks. Keep them coming. Anyone who hasn't called in, feel free to use that number. And we have a nice list of stuff now, which we can go through, and we're going to start covering some of those films.
Yeah, I would love to to take a crack at Burnt Offerings. It's been quite a while since I've seen it, but I remember loving it.
Yeah. And remember to go out and check out the other Horsemen's podcasts, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Take care.
Take care, everyone.
It doesn't pay to try. All the smart boys know why. It doesn't mean I didn't try. I just never know why.